right, everybody, and good afternoon, and welcome to the Denali monthly webinar series. Today, our webinar is going to be dealing with the end of life for Windows XP. Basically, what the impact is going to be on everybody since Windows XP is no longer supported by Microsoft. All right, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and we will go ahead and I'll answer as many of those questions as I can at the end of today's webinar. Any questions I don't get to by the end of the webinar, we will make sure we post a response to your questions on the website where we post the recording. So we'll make sure that you'll have access to the questions and answers after the webinar is complete. We do ask that everybody stay muted. I've got everybody muted for now so that we can keep going throughout this webinar because we are limited on time today. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. And my name is Jeremy Beislein. I am a trainer here at Cougar Mountain Software, and I'm going to be your presenter here today. Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to be talking about the Windows XP end of life. Any concerns for Windows XP users because Windows XP is no longer supported. Also, any impact for Windows XP users, what's going to happen as a result of the Windows XP no longer being supported. We're going to discuss the different options for Windows XP users, and also we're going to give you the recommendations that Cougar Mountain recommends for those who are still using Windows XP. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started here. Windows XP, it's basically a great operating system Microsoft came out with, but it was about 13 years ago when it was released. It was in 2001. And it was a sort of a milestone for Microsoft because it was probably the biggest release of an operating system in Microsoft's history. It had a lot of robust changes from the previous versions of Windows. And it was also very user-friendly. So it kind of gave you the best of both worlds. However, because it's been so long since it was released, just like anything else that's good, all good things must come to an end. So therefore, Windows XP is no longer being supported by Microsoft, which means that it will also no longer be supported by any hardware or software manufacturer as well. Anyone who is still using Windows XP will be running into issues, which we will discuss those issues throughout this webinar here today. Basically, with any software, you're going to have what they call a life cycle. The life cycle of a software basically begins when the software is released and it ends when the software is no longer supported. Windows XP is an operating system for your computer that began in 2001 and the life cycle ended in 2014. Now, the reason why we have life cycles for our software is because there's a lot of groundbreaking achievements that come about, a lot of upgrades for hardware and other software that works with the operating system. And so with the increased internet security concerns and concerns for safeguarding data, and at the same time making Windows easier to use, even though XP was real easy to use to come out with a lot of new features available in the newer Windows operating systems, Windows XP is basically an operating system that is for the history books now. With newer technologies coming out, it's time to basically put Windows XP to rest. And so Microsoft has chosen the date for that to be April 8, 2014. That is the date that Microsoft ended support for Windows XP. Therefore, Windows XP will no longer meet the requirements. They end support because it's an older system trying to work on newer systems. Newer software developers are trying to develop software that Windows XP is not capable of handling some of the newer features they're developing. Newer hardware features coming out, Windows XP are not able to handle some of those newer features. So therefore, Windows XP basically is retired. So what is the impact on Windows XP retirement end of life for those who are using Windows XP? Basically, what happens if you continue to use Windows XP after the support ends for Windows XP? You're going to, most likely, you're probably not going to see much of an impact if you're a small to intermediate computer user. However, you may see issues coming up with security risk and viruses. There's going to be hackers that will be able to access and get into Windows XP a lot easier now because Microsoft has always done security updates up until now to override any hackers or any viruses or malware that's created to hack into XP users' computers. With the end of support, those viruses are no longer going to be blocked for Windows XP users. You also are going to see certain software incompatibility issues. With software upgrades, as you upgrade to newer versions of your current software, you're going to find software is going to start triggering more errors and more problems running under Windows XP. And of course, the most important problem that we're going to run into is the hardware compatibility. All newer versions of hardware coming out, newer computers, newer operating processors, newer memory, newer hard drives, newer monitors and printers and webcams, anything else that you use on your computer are no longer going to be compatible to work in the older Windows XP operating system as these newer devices are released. So this is the impact that you're going to see. Right now, since the support just recently ended, you're not going to see that as much of an impact as you will later on, and it's going to be more and more of an impact the longer you wait to upgrade your operating system to a newer version. So basically, Windows XP support has ended. That's the emphasis that we want to make on this webinar today, that as of April 8th, 2014, support for Windows XP is no longer available through Microsoft or through any other software or hardware partners that design and create software and hardware for the Microsoft operating system. So because Windows XP support has ended, you're going to see more and more start going forward of the impact that we talked about. Right now, it's not going to be that much of a problem because it recently ended. And if you did your updates with Windows XP before the support ended, you're probably good to go for a little while. But the more you use your computer, the more you're going to start seeing those impacts. The more you're going to see those errors pop up. The more you're going to see as you add new hardware or software to your computer, you're going to run into issues where the hardware and software is no longer compatible. This screenshot you're seeing on your screen now, this was actually taken from the Microsoft website. Basically, if they're saying that if you continue to use Windows XP now that support has ended, your computer may still work, but it might become more vulnerable to security risk and viruses. Also, Internet Explorer 8 is no longer supported. So if your XP PC is connected to the Internet and you're using Internet Explorer 8, you might be exposed to certain additional threats to your computer. More software and hardware manufacturers continue to optimize for more recent versions of Windows as well. And therefore, the software and hardware manufacturers will not be designing newer versions of their software for Windows XP. And that also goes for Cougar Mountain software as well. So this is why we are presenting this webinar today, to let you know that Cougar Mountain will no longer be releasing updates to our software that support Windows XP. So since Windows XP support has ended, since Windows XP has basically ended its life, what are your options? What is it that we can do to continue running your computer smoothly with all of the software and hardware that you've got going? Well, the first thing we always recommend, and any of you who call into Cougar Mountain support, you're going to always hear us say, make sure you have a current backup on file. So always run a backup. If you're going to continue using XP, make sure that you run regular backups, because some of the issues that we talked about that pop up, you can fix those issues by restoring a backup. If you're going to upgrade to a newer version of Windows, make sure you back up your system before those upgrades. So now that we've got our backups in place, what are our options? Well, the first option is, of course, you can continue using Windows XP. If you're okay with the different issues that are going to be popping up, and you can work around those issues, that might be an option for you. There are some pros and cons to that, which we talked about some of the issues. The pros is if you continue using XP, of course, you won't have to worry about learning any new operating system or features. Also, you won't have to come up with any money to upgrade your operating system at this time. However, the cons are, of course, we talked about, you're going to be vulnerable to security and compatibility issues. So that is something to consider for sure. The next option is we can upgrade to the next operating system released by Microsoft, which is Windows 7. Windows 7 is a great option, and we'll talk about that more later on in the webinar. But the thing about Windows 7 is it's still fully supported by Microsoft and by Cougar Mountain. And it basically is the most compatible operating system today for most hardware and software manufacturers, because it's been around long enough for anybody to work out compatibility issues, but yet it's still fully supported. The next option would be to go ahead and skip the Windows 7 upgrade and jump right up into the most recent version of Microsoft Windows, which is Windows 8. That is also a great option. Some things to consider about Windows 8 is it's going to be a bigger change from Windows XP to Windows 8 than what you'll see if you go from Windows XP to Windows 7. And so therefore there may be a bigger learning curve to consider. However, Windows 8 is the most recent version of Microsoft's operating system, so that is definitely an option if you're a Cougar Mountain Denali user. Now, if you're still using Cougar Mountain Professional, Windows 8 will not work with Professional, so keep that in mind. It's too new of an operating system for Professional, so it's going to be a problem if you're using Cougar Mountain Professional. Another option is to go ahead and continue using Windows XP until Microsoft comes out with the next release of Windows, which is scheduled to come out sometime next year in 2015. Right now, they're scheduled to release what they're calling Windows 9. That could change. They might change the name. They might change the time it's released. But one of the advantages of waiting for Windows 9 is you can wait for that most recent upgrade to perform your upgrade and do the upgrade once. That way you don't have to upgrade to 7, then to 8, then to 9. Just jump right into 9. Some of the drawbacks with that is it's going to be an even bigger jump from Windows XP, so there might be a bigger learning curve. Also, if you wait for Windows 9, you will have to deal with the security compatibility issues and the fact that Windows XP is no longer supported up until Windows 9 is released, and you go ahead and do that upgrade. But whatever you choose, whatever option you choose, make sure you consider all of your options carefully. Consider all of the pros and the cons, as we talked about. XP, the pros for keeping XP is that you won't have to pay anything to upgrade today. The cons is that you will have to deal with the issues of it no longer being supported. Windows 7, it might be a little bit less expensive to upgrade than some of the other options. That's a pro there. The cons for Windows 7 is you will have to come up with some money to do that upgrade. Also, if your computer is not compatible to run Windows 7, you will have to also invest in hardware upgrades as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later here. So consider all your options carefully for the pros and the cons of upgrading into what options you do have, and then just pick the one that's going to work best for you. A good resource to help you decide what option to choose is to go to the Microsoft website. They've got a lot of information. You can also just simply go to Google and just Google Windows XP end of life or upgrading from Windows XP, and you can get a lot of different information on the internet about what your pros and your cons are. But ultimately, that's going to be your decision of which option you go with. However, to help you with that decision, Cougar Mountain will definitely have some options for you as well that we recommend. Now, of course, Cougar Mountain recommends upgrading your system to Windows 7 at this point. Windows 7 is still a new enough operating system that it is fully supported by Microsoft, and it is fully supported by Cougar Mountain as well. All of these software that we provide will run on Windows 7 without any problems. So this is our #1 recommendation for all Cougar Mountain users, is to upgrade to Windows 7. We will be able to support Windows 7 until Microsoft ends its support, which won't come up for almost 6 years. So we're still good to go on Windows 7. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that if you are a Cougar Mountain Professional user, if you haven't upgraded to Cougar Mountain Denali yet, then your decision to upgrade to Windows 7 is a great decision. However, you want to make sure that you use the 32-bit version of Windows 7 for Cougar Mountain Professional, because Cougar Mountain Professional will not work on any 64-bit operating system, but it works great on the 32-bit version of Windows 7. So just make sure that if you're not going to upgrade to Denali yet, that you install the 32-bit version of Windows 7 if you choose to keep the Cougar Mountain Professional software, and you choose to go ahead and upgrade to Windows 7. However, if you are a Denali user, great news. Cougar Mountain Denali is fully compatible with all versions of Windows 7 and also with all versions of Windows 8. So there's no problem there. You can go into either Windows 7 or Windows 8 if you have Denali, and if you've upgraded to Denali if you were a previous professional user. Denali is Cougar Mountain's latest software, and it's the most supported. Most of the upgrades you see that come out from Cougar Mountain will be for Denali, although we are still supporting Professional for the time being. But for Denali, if you choose to go with the Windows 7 upgrade, you can either go with the 32-bit version or with the newer 64-bit version. It works just fine on either version, so there's no problem there. Windows 8 is also fully compatible with Denali, so you can choose to jump the Windows 7 upgrade and go right into Windows 8, and there's no problem there. We do recommend that if you are still using Cougar Mountain Professional, now might be a great time to go ahead and upgrade from Professional to Denali. The reason for that is because with Denali, which now includes payroll, those of you who have been holding off, Denali now has the payroll module available. With the Cougar Mountain Denali software, you will not have any problems with compatibility issues for the newer 64-bit platforms that are coming out. And with Microsoft's big push to get everybody over to the 64-bit platform, Cougar Mountain Denali is a great option, and we do recommend all professional users to go ahead and upgrade to Cougar Mountain Denali. The sooner the better. We can help you with that upgrade. We can help you with the conversion from your professional data to Denali. If you have any questions on that or what it would take to do the Denali upgrade, be sure to give your sales representative a call, and they can definitely help you with that. One thing to keep in mind, this is the #1 question. If you're going to upgrade your operating system, since XP is no longer supported, we're going to upgrade to Windows 7 or to Windows 8. The first question you need to ask is your computer capable of running the newer operating systems? You've been running Windows XP on your computer all this time, and that's great, but if you were to upgrade to Windows 7 or to Windows 8, will your existing computer be able to handle that particular upgrade? If you're using an older computer, chances are it won't. You might need to upgrade the computer itself in order to upgrade the operating system. So to give you an idea, if you choose Windows 7 upgrade, these are the minimum system requirements in order to install Windows 7 on your computer. Now keep in mind, these are the minimum requirements. This is the bare minimum that you need in order to upgrade your computer to Windows 7. You must have a minimum of a 1 gigahertz processor, either 32-bit or 64-bit, either one works for Windows 7. If you're going to use the 64-bit version of Windows 7, you will be required to have a 64-bit processor. You must have a minimum of 1 gigabytes of RAM of memory on your computer for either version. Oh, I take that back. I'm sorry. 1 gigabyte for 32-bit version, 2 gigabytes minimum for 64-bit. That's the minimum requirement. Hard disk space requirements. The 32-bit version of Windows 7 requires a minimum of 16 gigabytes available hard disk space. The 64-bit version requires a minimum of 20 gigabytes available disk space. So make sure that before you decide to upgrade the operating system, your computer can handle these requirements. Now, these minimum requirements will give you basic functionality of the operating system. To use the enhanced functions, such as the newer display features for Windows 7, you're going to want to have an additional processing power of at least 1.5 gigahertz. You're going to want at least 2 gigabytes of RAM. You're going to want at least double the hard disk space requirements. Your graphics card should handle things okay as long as it's a DirectX 9 graphics device. So for Windows 8, if you decide to skip Windows 7 and jump to Windows 8, one of the advantages of Windows 8 that Microsoft did is when they released Windows 8, they did not require much more than what Windows 7 requires in the way of hardware requirements. So you'll notice your minimum requirements for Windows 8 are pretty much the same. So if your computer can run Windows 7, you're pretty much okay that it can run Windows 8. The only issue is are you running Cougar Mountain Professional or Denali? If you're running Denali, Windows 8's fine. If you're running Professional, Windows 8 will not work for you. So those are some of the things to consider. So that's the big question. Do you need a computer upgrade? If you need a computer upgrade, we here at Cougar Mountain, we can also help you with that. We can also recommend the specific requirements for not only the operating system, but for the Denali software as well. And we here at Cougar Mountain also have computer upgrade solutions provided by Dell. So if you are interested in any hardware upgrades, make sure you contact your sales representative at 1-800-388-3038 for any hardware upgrades that you might be interested in, and we'll be more than happy to help you with that. All right, so that pretty much concludes the webinar presentation today. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into your questions here. So bear with me here, and we'll go ahead and get to as many questions as we can. Okay, question from Terry here. Oh, it's just a comment, I guess, Terry. She's just saying Mozilla Firefox is still supported in Windows XP. Yes, that is true, Terry. Anyone who is using Windows XP can still use Firefox. Internet Explorer 8 support has been ended in XP, but Firefox will still be supported. For how long, we don't know, so that is something to consider. Joanne asked a question, can I have a copy of this PowerPoint presentation file today? Yes, that will be available on the website. Be sure to keep an eye out. We'll be able to get that done for you. We're going to send an email out to all of you folks here to let you know where to access the webinar. All right, Tom. Good question, Tom. You say you are running Cougar Mountain Fun Suite Professional version 18.1 on Windows 7 on a virtualized server. You plan to upgrade the server software to Windows Server Software 2012, Release 2. Will we still be able to use Cougar Mountain Professional on the server? Cougar Mountain Professional, basically it's the client machine that you need to worry about of what operating system the client is going to be using. The server, wherever the database is loaded, it doesn't matter what server you're using. What matters is what the client is. So your client needs to be Windows 7 32-bit version. That's the only operating system that will still run Cougar Mountain Professional. That's going to be Windows 7 32-bit version. Any 64-bit version will not work. However, your server can be 64-bit. That's not a problem, unless you're planning on using the server to launch the Cougar Mountain Professional software itself as one of the client machines. Basically, whatever machines will be launching Cougar Mountain Professional, the client machine needs to be Windows 7 32-bit. Okay, George is asking, will Cougar Mountain Professional version 7 work on Windows 7 32-bit? Version 7 is a much older version, and you might run into some issues with that in Windows 7. It shouldn't be a problem. It should still work. But if you have any issues with that, then we here at Cougar Mountain are going to recommend that you upgrade to the most recent version of Windows 7, or of Cougar Mountain Professional, which is the current version is 18.1. To make sure there's no issues with that, we do recommend that you keep your software up to date, and that will keep it compatible with the operating systems that are still supported. Again, another question from Terry, is version 14.1 of Cougar Mountain Professional going to work on Windows 7 32-bit? I think it'll work better than version 7 would, but again, we do recommend that you keep your Cougar Mountain software up to date, which today is version 18.1. So if you have any questions on that update, go ahead and give support a call. We can help you with that update if you need. You can also go to cougarmountainservice.com to check for any updates that are available for your software. All right, going on down here. Question from Joanne. She's asking, what is the best recommendation for Pro and Denali of computer operating systems, and also for RAM? Not the minimum requirements. She wants to know what Cougar Mountain recommends. We recommend that you use, for Denali, we recommend that you use a minimum Intel i5 processor or equivalent, uh, and any speed, the processor speed, if you're using an i5, any of the different speed options available for that processor will work great with Denali. i7 is even better, but an i5 will work just fine on Denali. For professional, we recommend that you use at least the newer versions of the Intel Pentium processors. That's going to be 2.0 gigahertz or faster. For RAM, we also recommend that you have at least 2 gigabytes of RAM for either professional or Denali, no matter what operating system you're using. Make sure you have at least 2 gigabytes of RAM to ensure that the software will run smoothly. As far as the video requirements goes, same as the operating system minimum requirements. If you meet the minimum requirements for the operating system, professional or Denali will work just fine for the video. All right, so it looks like that's our last question. If there's no more questions or if any more pop in here after we close the presentation, oh, one more just popped in. Will payroll be supported if we choose to remain on Cougar Mountain Professional? I believe that's what you're asking, Ruby. If you choose to remain on Professional, the payroll module will be supported along with the other modules, if as long as Cougar Mountain is supporting the Professional platform. But again, we do recommend that this might be a great time to upgrade to the Denali platform, since we now have the payroll module available in the Denali platform. And if you've seen my previous webinars, you'll see that the Denali platform is much easier and more user-friendly than the Professional platform. So yes, absolutely, we will continue to support the payroll modules, whichever ones you're using. All right. If you do have any further questions, go ahead and contact us here at Cougar Mountain. We would be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Be sure to keep an eye out for upcoming webinars. Our next webinar, we're going to talk about Denali security, basically your user rights and security features that you have in Denali. That's scheduled for July 2nd. Future webinars beyond that will be determined, so be sure to stay tuned. If you have any additional questions, feel free to give us a call. You can always contact your sales rep for any upgrade questions, any questions on upgrading your software, or even if you need help with hardware upgrades. Give your sales rep a call at 1-800-388-3038, and we'll make sure to get you taken care of. You can visit our website at cougarmountain.com. That's cougarmtn.com. You can also contact our tech support line at 1-800-390-7053 for any tech support questions regarding your Cougar Mountain software or any compatibility issues you may be running into as a result of Windows XP end of life hitting us. You can also email techsupport@cougarmountain.com.